The M700 is a much better base platform than something like the Mosin, and it fires some of the best ammo in the game. The M700, you get a very versatile range of builds, from cheap but effective to very functional with high ergo and incredible accuracy. Let's look at why you'd want to use the M700 and how to build it. By far the most compelling aspect of the M700 is the ammunition, which offers a very high damage, high penetration, and high velocity for almost all rounds, which can be purchased from vendors such as the M61, M62, and M80. Let's break down the different builds for the M700, starting with the most budget-friendly. For each build, I'm going to give you a few key statistics, but it's important to understand that these are heavily affected by your character stats at the time, such as max strength and also the gear that you are wearing. The basic build for the budget M700 is grabbing the rifle off the flea market for somewhere around 33,000 rubles. Then we attach the M700 30mm integral ring scope mount and your favorite 30mm optic. For me, I usually choose the Voodoo or the Razor HD, but on a budget, the Burris works just fine. With the stock M700, we see a blue ergonomics value of 34, an accuracy rating of 0.77 MOA, and a muzzle velocity of 953 meters a second. With the higher ergonomics, this gun is very quick to aim down sights at 0.45 seconds, and I'm able to aim down sights for 51.67 seconds crouched and 38.7 seconds standing. Next, let's look at the first suppressed version by adding on the Daniel Defense Wave 762x51 muzzle brake and the QD sound suppressor, bringing the total value up to 123,000 rubles. The stock version with the suppressor has the worst ergo out of all the builds with a value of 15, but it maintains a reasonably high accuracy of 0.77 MOA and a muzzle velocity of 957. The red ergo value gives the suppressed version an ADS speed of 0.62 seconds. You can expect a crouched aim down sight time of 46.63 seconds and a standing time of 35.02 seconds. Next up, we have the Archangel Build. With an ergonomic value of 33, a muzzle velocity of 957, and an accuracy rating of 0.74 MOA. With this build, you can expect to aim down the sights in 0.47 seconds, stay aim down sights for 47.43 seconds while crouched, and 35.6 seconds while standing. Overall, this build is going to cost 114,000 rubles without an optic. Next up is the AICS. With an ergonomic value of 41, a muzzle velocity of 957, and an accuracy of 0.72 MOA. This build gives you a 0.42 second ADS speed and an aim down sight duration of 58.48 seconds while crouched and 43.85 seconds while standing. Overall, it's going to cost you 143,576 rubles without an optic. The Pro build comes out to 143,203 rubles. Overall, this gun has 60 ergonomics, which is the highest out of all the builds today. It also offers a muzzle velocity of 957 and an accuracy of 0.77 MOA. With the Pro build 60 ergonomics, you'll see an aim down sight speed of 0.28 seconds and a total aim down sight duration of 51.15 seconds while crouched and 38.4 seconds while standing. Finally, the last, most beautiful, and most expensive build on the list is the Mod X. This build comes in at 175,739 rubles without an optic. This build for the Mod X gives you an ergonomics value of 59, an accuracy rating of 0.77 MOA, and a muzzle velocity of 957. With these stats, you can expect an aim down sight speed of 0.3 seconds, and you can hold that ADS for 52.9 seconds while crouched and 39.7 seconds while standing. If we were to rank these builds by ergonomics, we'd first put the Pro at the top, followed by the Mod X, then the AICS, then the stock, Archangel, and then the suppressed stock. And sorting by price, we would first see the stock, followed by the stock suppressed, then the Archangel, Pro, the AICS, and then the Mod X. So my take on all this is that we're looking at cost compared with usability. This excludes the Archangel, the ICS, and the Mod X. And the best overall is going to be the Pro. It gives you the best ergo for the price. While the Mod X can technically beat it in ergo, the cost is significantly lower. If you're looking to go suppressed but you're still on a budget, the stock suppressed. It's silent, it's deadly. While you won't have the most high-end ADS speed, the arm stamina drain is still very usable. It's much better than any of the Mosin builds. If you want to just go flat out budget, go with the stock. Put a scope on there and call it a day. The stock lacking the suppressor saves this build in two main categories, in which is the cost and the ergo. Now the biggest downside to this is that the shot can be heard anywhere on any of the maps. And then kind of finally, just because it's cool, the Mod X is pretty sweet to use. Unlike some of the other guns, the Mod X looks amazing and performs just as well as the top build for this gun. The downside is the cost, but there comes a point in the game where that doesn't matter as much. It's all about the style. And in this video here, I walk you through how to get to that point.